Okay, and this is going to go up onto YouTube. My plan for today, so we're here for the second of two presentations on sales and client acquisition, which has been the theme of the Hothouse Group for April. And as you probably all know, Hothouse this year is cycling through the sectors of your business, the operational departments of your business, looking at each one of them in turn and trying to hone them to the best possible conditions so that the whole business pulls together to get the best outcomes. So we are doing sales and client acquisition on YouTube. We have all of the videos that have gone before. So there's marketing and founder presence and business planning. And then we are going to have operations and systems coming up in June. Operations and systems is going to be pretty massive. I'm already working on it. It's really big. So that's coming up in June. And then, oh my God, I'm slightly terrified. I'm coming back in. We're all away for the holiday. You're all going to be so busy because all these people that can't fly are going to be booking you to come in to decorate their homes. So that's going to be great. And then we're going to come back in September. And September, we're doing financial mastery, which is my own personal nemesis. And I've put it in because I want to challenge myself. So by slotting it in September, then that's going to challenge me. And then in October, we're going to do our big push again, which we did last year. And the big push is the final quarter of the year. Maybe you've got a goal that you had for the year that got sidelined and life got in the way. Well, it's the last quarter of the year, and a gang of us offline again, well, we'll be online, but we'll be off to one side, are going to get together to try to force this thing through by the end of the year. We'll be bringing up the end of the year by looking actually at design excellence. So you would think it would be sort of up there as a priority, but and we are going to deal with it, but mostly we're looking at operations and systems and sales and marketing and so on. So today is the second part of sales and client acquisition for this year. Last year, I did psychology, really, selling to high net worth individuals. So there are a couple of videos on YouTube that are specifically from the client perspective, the psychological side of working with high net worth individuals as clients. So that was sort of on the client side. This time we're talking about our businesses and we're thinking about ourselves, our own performance. Last webinar, we spoke about our own psychology and how that can trip us up, and how if we think of ourselves more like elite sports people, and we try to adopt some of the mind exercises that an elite coach might use with a high performance athlete, we can maybe coax ourselves through these more challenging aspects of selling. So that was part one. Today we're coming back and we're just going to look at the systems and processes within our business that support marketing and sales. So I'm going to share a presentation with you, I hope. Sorry, I'm probably just going to have to. Okay. All right. Carol, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see that client acquisition? Thank you very much. Okay. So I would ask you, we half an hour on this, half an hour, 35 minutes on this, followed by Q&A. Ideally, if you could put yourselves on mute while I'm talking, and then I will obviously open it. We can have a big conversation about it when I'm done. So we are now going to be looking actually at the systems and processes and the more practical steps we can take to support sales within our business. I am going to say welcome. Welcome to everybody. I hope you're all members of Hothouse. I think you are. Hothouse is my private Facebook group, but it's completely free. It is a resource hub for interior designers. It's where I host links to webinars and materials that are just designed to try to help you improve your business success. So welcome to Hothouse and welcome to this presentation. Last time, earlier this month, it's on YouTube, we looked at, sorry, I'm just change my screen a little bit. We looked inside the designer's head and we thought about mindset, psychology, and performance routines. That was the most recent webinar. Today, we are thinking about systems, processes, and the architecture of sales, the sales system within your business. So just to remind us some of the themes that I've spoken about before, with this framework that I'm going to talk to you about today, the idea is that the actual point of selling, the point in time at which you sell, should just be a natural conclusion of the process that has led to it. So it shouldn't be a high risk, high stakes moment, of anxiety. Ideally, if we stage our sales process correctly, and a lot of this does actually assume that perhaps your business is a little bit more experienced, you've been around a little bit longer, you've got more systems and process in place, you can be a little bit more selective yourself about your clients. But ideally, the sale is the natural conclusion of a relationship that has been built on genuine understanding. And the other thing I wanted to bring forward, this is actually from the 2 webinars, Selling to Ultra High Net Worth Individuals, that I ran last year, which is this concept that we sometimes when you hear interior designers talking about their clients, or sometimes when we think about our clients, we can almost think of ourselves as being in a battle with them, and the client can sometimes believe, if the trust hasn't been built well enough, the client might think that you stand to gain if they lose, and vice versa. And actually, when we're working with ultra high net worth individuals, the point is to get ourselves into the position of a trusted advisor, someone who is on the same side as the client, someone, who, when there is a problem with the project, the designer says, oh, this is awful, I feel terrible, this is so awful for you, we're both on the same side, we both feel this, and the client really feels that the designer is on their side of the net as their tennis partner and not in a game of singles where they're adversarial. So this is an awful lot of this selling stuff is actually about mindset. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about lead generation, where your clients come from. We're going to talk about how you manage inquiries. We're going to talk about the discovery process. We'll talk about the proposal itself that you put to the client. We'll talk about how you manage your pipeline. And then we're going to wrap up with a quick stop at what you do post-project and how you can be developing your business. Starting with lead generation, a well-run practice knows where its clients come from and manages those sources deliberately. An aside, I was talking to some designers today, and I was just reflecting that the practices that I work with, who are most consistently busy with good quality work, usually their website is the engine of the business. So from their website, because of the analytics, because of the careful construction of their website, they know where people are coming from. They know where their clients are coming in from. We have 3 engines that we can use to generate interest, and we should be nurturing all 3 of these engines. And these engines produce clients that are different degrees of warmth. Okay, some of them are hot to trot, some of them are warm, but not boiling, and the others are maybe slightly cooler. And some of this can equate to trust as well. How inclined the clients coming in from different threads, different areas, how inclined they might be to trust you and to believe that you are going to bring something valuable to their project. So our number one, and amongst the most neglected areas for building our pipeline, is client referrals. So encouraging clients that we have already worked with um, to introduce us within their network, to make introductions or to pass on our name and so on. So there are steps that we can take to make that happen. Then there are professional partners. I'm going to go through each of these in turn. Our professional partners maybe are other professionals we work with, surveyors, architects, estate agents, and so on and so on. And then inbound pull is our marketing. So, what we're doing on the marketing front in order to encourage people to come to our business. So, when we think about our client referrals, we're talking about the right kind of people. I'm assuming that we're talking about clients who we enjoyed working with whom we had a successful collaboration. We would hope that their network is going to include similar people with similar qualities. So they are, and if they are happy, they are going to be your most vocal, your most vocal fans. So, however, quite often this particular route of pipeline to your pipeline is neglected. We're not always brilliant about trying to make this happen. So perhaps it's the least deliberately managed. Your file with your past client ought not to close at the point that you hand them over their project. So we need to be looking for ways in the nicest, most personal way possible, and not without crowding people, of keeping that relationship warm so that we don't get forgotten. The number of times I've spoken to people who've said, "Oh yeah, I needed somebody," and "Oh, if I'd only just remembered, about you." So we need to keep ourselves, somewhere in the not too deep brains of our successful clients. So we want a formal post-project conversation built into our processes as part of our sales process. A recommendation is that you get in touch with your past clients, maybe every 6 months, and that additionally, you have one sort of annual touch point check-in with those clients. Now, specificity signals that the relationship is real. So I'm not talking about sending out a mail shot, "Dear client, yada yada." I'm talking about a personal note or a letter or, a WhatsApp or something saying, "Oh, I was in Chelsea Harbour and remember that thing we were looking for? They had a really nice one." Or, "Oh, I've just heard this about, A levels, and I know your kids are taking their A levels this year, and I hope it's all going well," or whatever, but it's showing that it's specific to them and it's not part of a generic mail shot. Now, our next engine is our professional partners. And this is also a very warm area to get references in from. So, and ideally, this would be the source of repeat referrals. If we nurture this well, then hopefully it leads to repeat referrals. Every time I spend a lot of time talking to clients about marketing, particularly, when I'm talking to new designers who are starting their businesses up, I must say, every designer says, "Oh, I'm going to reach out to the architects who work near me, or I'm going to reach out to the estate agents." I've never worked for a firm of architects or estate agents, but I imagine they get quite a lot of inbound stuff from people like us. So we need to nurture these relationships rather than sort of mail shot them or one and done. We're talking about building a relationship that might take 2 to 3 years to actually bear fruit. So we're in this. This is a marriage that we're trying to embark on. So first of all, we need to find the right partner because we're going to marry them. And then we need to put in the hours and the work. So hopefully the decision to use you is already made, before you're even called in. Again, 6 contacts per year minimum per priority partner. And give before you ask. So ideally, there is something that you can do for these people. So you, rather than going in with an ask, we're trying to engage with people who obviously we can rub their backs as well. You might kiss some frogs. You might do some stuff for people and never get anything back. So we have an open mind. And the other thing that we don't want to do is be trying to nurture 4 estate agents or trying to nurture 6 architects. Ideally, we're going to find somebody who is a good fit, and we are going to try to make that into a sort of deeper personal relationship. So some of my clients have a challenge to themselves that they might have a coffee a month, and they will do the work to try to find the most likely looking candidates in their local area, and they will try to engage with that person and see if they can't just sit down and speak to them for 15 minutes on a monthly basis. Different people each time, but with the view of, after a period of time, having sort of, I don't know, 6 to 12 people on your little black book who you feel confident might actually be on your side. As I said, 2 to 3 years potentially before this actually starts delivering. So this is a slow burn. And again, marketing as well is a slow burn. So the inbound pull of the marketing that we throw out, so your published work, awards that you might be able to put yourself in for, any press that you might get, photography of business of projects that you have taken, and increasingly these days as well, showing up personally. So personal photography being a sales asset and not vanity, making sure that we are able to promote our businesses and not worrying that we might have family watching or friends watching or whatever. We're professionals and we need to be able to attend to this in the most professional and serious way. Now, marketing is not a quick fix, and it's entirely likely that your clients are going to be watching you for 6 to 12 months before you actually see this again beginning to bear fruit. So I said recently, I started Hot House a year ago in January, and I don't think I heard a thing from anybody for about 8 months. And in that time, I could have assumed that it wasn't going to take off, that it wasn't going to happen. But I made a commitment to myself that I would do it for 12 months, regardless of whether anybody showed up. And at about 8 months, I started feeling like things were happening. There wasn't any great evidence, but it felt like things were happening. So just have in mind the likely time that it's going to take for your marketing to begin to bear fruit. So we want to make it easy for the right client to find us. I spend a lot of time working with people on business planning and planning their marketing with the goal of connecting to aligned clients. So not being generic, not sounding like everybody else, but actually having a position, having a philosophy, having a process, being distinct, and setting out to encounter a particular type of client and targeting that client and making sure that we're being very intentional and very specific in the work that we're doing, making it easy for the right client to find us. So moving on to actually managing the inquiries that come in. The more you elevate your business, and I speak about tiers. So I talk about, tier 1 designer is a new business. Tier 2 is that new business, but starting to feel a bit jaded by the experience of being tier 1. And so stepping up and putting in processes and, elevating a bit to overcome some of the challenges of being a brand new business, but still feeling a bit, having some growing pains. Tier 3 is maturity. You've got everything sorted, you've been going for a while, it's now ticking along smoothly. And the question is, do you want to grow? What are your plans for this business? Because perfectly valid to sit where you are, you've got a great business, maybe you stop at tier 3. And tier 4 is stardom. Tier 4 is stepping into the limelight, becoming a thought leader, elevating your business and working very specifically with particular clients and not with others. There's an exclusivity that comes with stepping up to tier 4. So inquiry management. Our newer designers tend not to filter their clients to such an extent because it isn't for them, it isn't just about the financial value of the project. The project has further value. It has the value of giving experience. It has the value of maybe giving photographs. It has the value of getting a testimonial, and all of these have equal or greater weight for the new designer than the financial side. So tier one, you're probably not going to filter, you hopefully will get rid of time wasters, but you're not going to be filtering quite so hard. As you elevate your business, you will need to filter those incoming clients to a greater degree. So you are going to be a bit more discerning about who gets through the discovery process. You're going to perhaps start to let people self-select out by the information that you put into public on your website when they discover, the kinds of investment that is going to be necessary to work with you. We can begin to filter people out intentionally as we intentionally pull our businesses further up, elevate and pull them further up the value chain. So I've been talking a little bit about marketing, and marketing is the transmission of the message about our business to many. It's telling the public about our business. But the minute that a live prospect shows up and we have a prospective client in front of us, what was previously marketing becomes sales. So we are now intentionally putting this client through a process that we have designed, and the process has been designed specifically to try to convert this client, to convert them from being interested in our business to actually engaging our business to serve them. So we are moving from marketing to many, and sales, which is this relationship with the client. So at the point that we start thinking about filtering, and the degree to which we filter depends on the developmental stage of our business. One opportunity for filtering is at the discovery stage, when the client first shows up and we have a conversation with the client, a planned conversation with the client to discuss their needs and to discuss their situation. And we ask lots of questions, and the whole time we are making a judgment about whether or not this feels like a fit. And of course, the client is as well. So that is one opportunity for filtering our clients, when we have this first encounter, assuming that the client passes through our gate that we've erected at that point, and of course, assuming the client wants to pass through the gate based on the conversation that you've had, we take them on to another potential filtration point. And the second filtration point is a consultation, a full consultation where we are investing time in getting to understand this project and the client in an in-depth way. And I'm going to have a conversation, actually, I think I'm going to save this for Q&A, for whether or not these are paid, because I was in a group this morning, we had quite an interesting conversation this morning about whether or not these should be paid. I'll give you the headlines. If you have a really attractive situation that you really want to work on, and they have this, it's good because it's been brought to you by one of your warm connections. So there is, that there's a very good chance that you are the chosen designer. That it's a fantastic project. It's been referred to you by somebody that you know and trust very well. It's almost like being inside your network that this is happening. Those would be the sorts of situations where even quite a experienced designer might not choose to charge. However, we spoke about other occasions when this is an unknown scenario, we're not entirely sure about the client, and perhaps charging is an opportunity to test the seriousness of the client. So it's not necessarily paid every time, And perhaps we can talk about that a little bit when we come to Q&A. It's quite complex. So the discovery call is really important. And in fact, I'm going to go back one stage because I was talking to a client the other day and she's had an inquiry, and the inquiry looked like it was generic. It looked like it possibly had been sent to a number of different practices, but it was a well-written inquiry, and it contained quite a lot of information. And the question was how to respond, how to respond. Now, we actually had a play around with AI, and we got an AI response, and the AI response was really well written and so on. But I felt like it could be better. And this client, in their letter to us, had been quite vulnerable, speaking about her family situation. And I knew that it was a situation that the designer that would resonate with the designer, that the designer would really understand this. And so instead we went back to AI and we told AI that what we wanted was a response that very subtly indicated that the designer really, from a personal point of view, really understood the situation that the client was in. It wrote the message. It was very tasteful. It was almost imperceptible, but there was definitely a resonance within that response. And this was just to a sort of blind inquiry. Well, I can tell you that what came back from the client as a result of that was a completely different type of letter. It was she obviously felt seen. She completely warmed up, and absolutely she wanted to meet the designer, So it was about that first inquiry not being dealt with in a sort of generic professional way, still dealt with in a professional way, but very much from the position of having understood the client and the client's very personal situation. So then we get on to discovery and we have a chat, and it's a very important stage in the passage of the client, because what we want is to keep the client sort of committed through progressively committed by having these stages with them, which are set piece stages, and each time they move on to the next step, they are getting sort of increasingly interested and committed to our business. So this is a process. So we want to put effort into the discovery call, and we want to make sure that the quality of what we do really demonstrates our understanding and how client-centric we are. Okay, now personal contact. I've just got some data here, which actually I think was in my previous webinar, but leads contacted within an hour are 7 times more likely to have a meaningful conversation with the business, Harvard Business School. So we respond really quickly. Direct personal follow-up can increase conversion by up to 50%. This comes from Salesforce. 70% of luxury purchases are influenced by human interaction. So, particularly now, I don't know, there's, all of this digitization and AI, and I'm absolutely big user of it myself. But, I do think that it almost feels like human contact is a luxury. It feels like a luxury, and it's really quite lovely. And then finally, initial personal contact increases client conversion by up to 60%. And that comes from McKinsey. So increasingly, I think personal contact at this early stage of the process is going to make a difference. So your discovery call is, and we had a conversation actually about this with a newer designer at the end of the previous webinar who was about to have a discovery call, and we were encouraging the designer to not to feel like they needed to perform, because actually the discovery call is gathering information. It's triage. We're assessing the fit of the client. We are personalizing the connection. we are thinking the whole time about how we could tailor the services that we offer to give the very best outcome to this client based on the priority of their needs. So we are, again, I was talking to designers about this morning, about how we take control of the situation. So the client doesn't turn up and tell us what it is we are to deliver. The client tells us the outcome that they want, and we design the suite of services to deliver that outcome. So we're making sure that we are in control of this situation from the get-go. It gives us a sense of the client. It gives us the opportunity to bat around the concept of budget. We are going to have a more natural sale at the point that we have that crunch meeting. We're going to have a more natural sale if the conversation around budget has been broached in different ways as we've progressed towards it. So during the discovery call, the designer is a curious expert, as in someone who's deeply interested in the situation. They are not a nervous applicant. They are not performing. They are finding out about the project so that they can bring their considerable practice and expertise to helping the client with the challenges that they have. At the end of the last webinar, we also spoke about, here we have this lovely couple, usually a couple, working in residential interiors. What if they are not what they seem to be? Or if your gut is telling you that this isn't necessarily somebody that would be a good idea to be locked into this marriage-like relationship with. So red flags can be things like, talking down other professionals that they have worked with, criticizing other professionals, telling you that you are one of 7 people that they are considering for the job, being deeply interested in things like your trade discounts and that being their priority, seeming to have no curiosity at all about how you work or what your systems are, not having an intrinsic understanding of the value that you might bring, which could just be part of the need for you to educate your clients so that they get it. But overstepping boundaries. So taking control, trying to assume control of the situation, or just treating you a bit like, the hired help. So these can be some of the things that we encounter in the discovery call that make us think, actually, I'm not sure I can help you. I can be the person you need at this moment in time. So I think probably it's best I release you and let you go and find another designer. So I'm not sure I love the term discovery call. It doesn't sound very high end. So we've played around with ideas like initial consultation, introductory conversation, client welcome call, design introduction meeting, yada, yada, yada. But when we were talking about ultra high net worth clients last year, we thought that we could probably come up with a better nomenclature for this part of the process to make it sound more elevated and more aspirational. So we want to be, for each of these interactions, each of these set piece events along through our sales process, we need to close. At the end, we need to close. We need to go into the meeting thinking, what do I need to achieve from this meeting? And what you need to achieve from the discovery call, assuming you want to go ahead, but what you need to achieve from the discovery call is that you press this on and it becomes a preliminary meeting. So you're trying to get the client, your goal is to expand the conversation and have a proper conversation because you both agree that you're interested in pursuing it. I've said that the preliminary meeting is chargeable. I mostly put that in because I don't want people to undervalue you or to mess you around. And sometimes if designers are a bit less experienced, they can be taken advantage of. And by charging, that really does test just how committed a client is. But as I said, we don't, even at the top end, we don't necessarily charge for these meetings. So we'll maybe talk about that. Now, so this morning when I was talking to the designers, I was talking about teaching at KLC, where I used to teach, and talking about the difference between so we've got an external speaker coming in, and there are two options. You can promote that external speaker. You can say, in a week's time, this person is coming in, look at their achievements. Oh my goodness, we're so lucky to have them. I want you students to think about it. I want your questions ready. I want you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, because this is an opportunity for you. So that is the preamble that we can give to an external expert. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what would happen is we wouldn't do that, and the same external expert would come in, and they'd be thrown in front of the students, and there'd be no preamble, and the students would be, I don't know, looking at their phones, or wouldn't have any questions ready, or wouldn't have thought about anything. And I promise you, we could put the same person in front of both groups and have Group A coming out saying, wow, that was amazing. And Group B coming out saying, oh yeah, did we see that? I can't really remember. So you want to create some of this excitement, some of this drama, some of this momentum through your process. So this lucky individual has just managed to get through your discovery process. They've been approved for the next step, and they are now going to get to meet you in person, probably in a preliminary meeting. And this is where we start to try to prepare the client, to give them an indication of what they're getting themselves into, to begin to surface some of those things that might come as a shock further down the road. So we're peppering that through, and to give them a real sense of occasion about the meeting that they're about to have, and make sure that they're fully mentally prepared for it. So we have these packs. We have a pack, we have a welcome pack, or let's call it a how we work pack, or whatever you want to call it, which gets sent to the client between discovery and preliminary meeting and gets them excited. So the point of the preliminary meeting is we've got a client with early interest. We want to convert them to somebody with whom we have a formal working relationship. And the method by which we're going to convert them is by putting together a package of services designed to solve their problems, to give them the dream that they hold. There is a price attached to this, but first and foremost, we are talking about problem solving, a package of services that solve the problem at a price. And that is what we are going to be producing as a result of having this preliminary meeting. So the purpose of the preliminary meeting is to gather sufficient information to produce a perfectly pitched fee proposal. And this is something else that I have been speaking about with clients recently, where at all of these points, at all of these events, we are in control. We have the reins. It's our process. It's our business. We determine what we provide. We determine how it is provided. We are explicit about our services and what we do. All of this gets bundled and presented to the client. The client is subject to our process. And we are simply, they're on the conveyor belt and they're moving through the stages of the process. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the kinds of things we talk about at the preliminary meeting: the property, the scope of the project, how much they want to invest, the period of time, whether they've worked with designers or architects in the past, who the team is going to be. Do we need to speak to their teenage kids? To both of them, who are the stakeholders, the vision that they have, your value and expertise, what you can bring to this project. And of course, we're still thinking about closing. So the next step, we go into this meeting and we decide that what we want is a date in the diary at which we are going to present the solution to their problem. The solution comes with a price. So yes, I am talking about the fee proposal, but we're going to make that date with them to sit down and talk them through the solution and explain to them what's going to be required from them to get that to get that solution. So what I'm talking about is a process. It's an intentional process at which every stage has been designed to carry the client to the next stage, assuming we want to work with that client. And it's a process of progressive commitment. And the more we can take the client on to each of these different stages, the more likely it gets that the client is actually going to engage with us. So our public marketing, what we say to the public, helps pre-qualify that client, makes it more likely that the person who turns up, if we do our marketing well, the person who turns up is a good fit for us and they know what they're getting into. The discovery call continues to pre-qualify the client and ensures that we're aligned in terms of budget. If we charge for our consultation, we get a better sense that the client is serious. And then we want to get them to the proposal meeting, because if we have got all of this progressive commitment, and if the way that we work has been transparent, and if they have some idea of how we charge and how we're going to bundle our services, then the point of selling, the point at which we sell at the proposal meeting, becomes a natural next step. So we can try to dial down some of the high stakes energy that we associate with this event, this proposal event. So, our proposal. I spoke in the last presentation about process focus and outcome focus. Okay, we spoke about elite athletes and the psychology of working with an elite athlete, where they aren't thinking about running a sub 2 hour marathon. They are thinking about the ultimate process of running. How can they get their process perfected? The outcome is, I'm sure it isn't, but the outcome is almost irrelevant. And we need to get ourselves into this situation where we are so process focused, so focused on the best possible execution of these different stages, that we've got less anxiety associated with the outcome. So with our proposal, the opening is proof we were listening. It's the client's own language. Now, really good practice to get a load of websites, put them through AI, interior design websites, and get AI to critique them, and then get it to look at yours and get it to critique your website based on the 5 other competitors that it has just looked at. And I tell you something that stands out, trying not to use expletives here, something that stands out really clearly at this point is how client-centric your presentation is. So many websites say, let me tell you about me, let me tell you why I'm a great designer, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. What we want our proposal to do is say, let me tell you about you. Okay, here's how I understand your situation. Here's where I see you need help. Here's where this is how you must be feeling. Here's how we can deal with your problem. So it's a client's own language, and you're demonstrating your attunement with the client. It's all about the client. Our proposal covers the scope. So it talks about the services we're going to deliver by phase of the design process. It tells the client what's included. It tells the client what isn't included. We're being specific and transparent. It tells them how many revisions they're going to get and what might trigger additional fees. This is all information. This is past the salt. This doesn't have emotion attached to it. It is delivery of information. The fee is calibrated to the client. So it's calibrated to the requirements of the client. Now, of course, we can change the scope and change the fee. We would never deliver more for the same fee, but we could look at changing the scope and changing the fee. But in the first instance, we are trying to do our very best, and the fee is calibrated to the client. Don't forget that our client wants to be led by their heart, but they want to have the purchase approved by their head. So we have vision and storytelling, but we also have scope and schedule. So we are demonstrating not just the design excellence, the experience, the magic, the wonder, but also, the time saving, the money saving, the efficiencies, the quality of project management and organization and so on. So we're covering systems 1 and 2, and we are presenting in person. We are not sitting up till 4 o'clock in the morning, drafting something and then hitting send. We are trying to actually encounter the client and, go through this process with them. It's part of our selling process. Now, granularity. We had a big conversation about this last week. I am a spendthrift. I'm terrible with money. I'm not terrible with money, but I'm pretty bad with money. And my partner is whatever the opposite of a spendthrift is. So when we built our house here, we built this house, we had no furniture because it was a new house, and there was a project to furnish this house. I was able to get, because it was one bundled package, I was able to get stuff through that I wouldn't normally be able to get through, because there normally would be an item by item thing going on. And the fact that we had save, and we're going to put this thing in to elevate, the elevations would have been deleted and we'd just have been left with the saves. I chose to present this as a bundle, and as a result, the elevations slip through. I know now it's going to be really unlikely for me to get a further elevation into this house. It's probably not going to happen. It's the same with your clients. And indeed, there are parts of the country where things like this are more likely to trigger an inquiry, and parts of the country where people are more relaxed about this kind of expenditure. So quite how you present the expense of a project can vary, and there are different people in different parts of the country. And cut me and I bleed BIID. I love the BIID. I'm all for the BIID. And we are transparent and we are ethical and we have the client's interests in mind and so on. But sometimes there are ways of presenting things that are more aligned with the part of the market that you're working in. So just something to think about. I'm nearly done. We're nearly done. Sales superpowers. Okay. This one is, I don't know if Charlotte is around, but this is something for you because you told us about this the other day. You were talking about sales training that you had where the various people there for sales training were told that there was a good chance they were a cat or a dog. And a cat was someone who stood back, who had poise, but was quite sort of aloof. And the dog was the one who bounded up and was enthusiastic and sort of all over the client. And that when we were thinking about what kind of a salesperson we are, we should have an awareness of whether we were more cat or more dog. And we should also think about the client and whether the client is more cat or more dog. And we should moderate perhaps our performance based on mirroring and how we feel that match would be with the client we were confronted with. So a little bit of self-awareness. However, for this project, for this presentation, I did some research and I was thinking about, because I know some phenomenal salespeople in this industry as well, people who, it's like, if somebody said to me, you can either be a really good designer or you can be a really good salesperson, I would choose being a really good salesperson. I wouldn't want to be a bad designer, but actually when it comes down to business success, sales superpowers really count. So here we have the list of things that we usually find with someone who's really good at selling. They have a transactional frame, so they're not sort of worried about social. They understand that things are bargains and they're quite comfortable with that, and they're quite comfortable for asking for things. They have low rejection sensitivity. When they get rejected, they shrug and it's fine. It doesn't stay with them. They want to close. They don't think that pinning people down and making them agree to something is rude. They're very happy to pursue a conversation and try to get to that end closing point. They are genuinely interested in people. They are seriously, that's not a front. They genuinely are deeply interested in people, and that curiosity is what drives them. They are at high stake moments when they have to present the thing, they're absolutely fine. They have emotional steadiness in high stakes moments. In the last presentation, we talked about little tricks you could play on yourself to try to get into that frame of mind. And they have secure interpersonal attachment, which means that they don't take rejection personally. It was similar to the previous point, but no doesn't matter to them. It really doesn't matter to them. So the reframes are, when you're asking for something from a client, it's because you want to serve them. It's because you have the opportunity to make their dreams come true. You have to ask for this thing in order to make it happen. No is information. Now, some of these salespeople I'm thinking of, people I've known, they often don't accept no. And I don't mean that they're pushy or they're troublesome or whatever, but they don't see no necessarily as the end of the conversation. They go away, they rethink it, they maybe come up with something else, they go back and ask, or they go back and say, okay, I get it. I really get it. I get the no, but I'm so interested in knowing why, help me out here. So no is information, it's not a verdict. Closing is not a confrontation, it's a courtesy. Otherwise, you walk away from the meeting. It's like, well, what happens next? Who's in charge here? We need closing. Confidence, I wrote this earlier and I have no idea what I meant when I wrote it. But anyway, confidence is not the precondition, it's the result. Well, confidence matters. They have the emotion, building the emotional steadiness in high stakes moments, and detachment. So when you fail, let's call it fail, love the fails, they're all good. When it doesn't work out and you don't get the job, the fact that we don't burst into tears doesn't mean we don't care. It just means that we're taking it really professionally. It's more of a professional interest in this than a personal thing. So pipeline management. I'm so sorry. This has taken me longer than I had expected. What a functioning pipeline reveals. So we want to manage our pipeline through these various methods, including our marketing. When we are managing our pipeline well, we know where our clients are coming from. We know which of our engines is delivering. We know the conversion rate. So we know how many clients we get through, to stage one, how many clients through to stage two, why are we losing so many at that point? Is our marketing failing? Are we charging too much? Are we not charging enough? We can be intentional about investigations into why our sales are or aren't working. I'm working with clients at the moment who are in conversation with clients who will give them work next year. Some of these lead times can be really, really long. We need to be nurturing our clients over extended periods of time. What is the average time from first contact to commitment? What is the average project value, depending on the sources the sources of your projects? Is there one source that delivers a much higher value project? What does that tell you? And ideally, our referral income, if we can make that into a system, becomes forecastable and not something that we hope for. So the minimum viable system, I've written a blog post on client relation management talking about CRM for interior designers, and it tells you how to set up a basic client relationship management system. You need a spreadsheet. You need to log your prospects on the spreadsheet. You need to note where they came from and then decide what your next action is going to be and make sure that you pick up with that. So the discipline matters more than the tool. A simple spreadsheet will do. And we all know what we're meant to be doing post-project and for business development. We need to get our photography scheduled. We need to make sure the client's cool with that when we start. Way back at the beginning, we need to find ways to make that more likely to happen. We need to be proactive in collecting our testimonials. I've got clients who are trying all kinds of things with Google reviews, to short of actually writing them for the client, trying to ensure that these things do get posted. Google reviews, very important. Press submissions where appropriate, and making sure that that post-project conversation is scheduled in. It's something that you do. So, 2 weeks after everything is finished, you take your client out for lunch and you buy them lunch and you chat about the project and you get their candid feedback and you ask them to make further referrals for you. So, our business development is 10 to 12 priority partners in your target geography, getting in touch with them 6 times a year. These are not 6 sales calls. They're invitations to events. They're forwarding useful articles. They're making sure you're referring them and they know that you are. They're, handwritten notes or social credit that you're getting through connecting with these people. And you have a give first posture. Generosity is what distinguishes a genuine relationship. But we bear in mind that these professional connections could take, a couple of years before they start feeding through. So I think this is my final slide. What good looks like. Your lead generation, you've got all 3 engines active. Photography is standard. The referral network is deliberately managed. Your inquiry management, you have a triage system in place. You raise budget as part of discovery. You don't give time until you know that the client is a good fit. So you're making sure that, you're filtering your clients correctly. Your proposals demonstrate your proof of listening. They give a clear scope. They are calibrated to the granularity. They have as much detail or as little detail as is best for the situation, and they are presented in person. The pipeline, you log the source where the client heard about you. You make sure that you have their status recorded. You know what the next action is going to be, and you're tracking your conversion rates. And if there's some point in the funnel that your conversion breaks down, we have an inquiry into why that's happening. Post-project, you're photographing, you're collecting testimonials, you're going for press, and you're having that referral conversation. And in terms of business development, you're making sure that you're finding those priority partners, you're getting in touch with them 6 times annually, you're making sure that you give to them, and you're thinking about that as having a 2 to 3 year horizon. And I have got 1 minute for questions, but I'm going to stick around a lot longer than that. So I'm so sorry that that took me longer than I was expecting. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Anything you'd like to chat about?
I have a question, Julia.
Holly, hello.
Hello,
How
how
did
are
it how did
you?
it go? Was it okay?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I've been working on it today. They accepted the proposal, and it's a great project. So I'm super excited. It's very, very good. Um, Question for you on photography, if I may. I'm thinking about that project in particular. How would you recommend to approach that conversation? Who should be paying for it?
You. Well,
Yeah.
you need to, that's part of your marketing budget. Your marketing budget is 5 to 7% of your revenue. So 5 to 7% of your revenue gets set aside. For a new business, that's not very much. It won't even touch the sides. But once you're big and successful, you'll have more money for that kind of thing. I have got a client who has a very, if I'm just going to generalize this, there are superstar photographers. If you have a superstar client, your superstar client might love the idea of having a superstar photographer capture
Mhm.
their home. That will come with a 6-figure bill. No, it won't. It'll come with a 5-figure bill. And in that case, the client might be persuaded to pay for it. Otherwise, you are paying for it. It's going to cost you minimum £650 for a day, more
Yeah.
likely 1,000, £1,200 for a day, up to, I don't know, £2,000 or £3,000 for a day, depending on who you choose. But
Mhm.
it's part of your marketing budget. Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's helpful. Thank you.
if you want to be published, then you need to make sure that the photographer is going to allow the photographs to be used in a magazine and isn't going to want to have the magazine pay again for the use of the photographs. So you just need to
Yeah.
find out what the licensing arrangement is going to be when you arrange the photography.
Yeah, I've encountered that already. So, okay, that's good. Thank you very
Cool.
much.
Any other questions?
Yes, I've got two, if I may, Julia.
Yeah, Jenny, go ahead. Yeah.
The first one was you said earlier about I think we covered it on the first webinar was about that personal interaction and increasing the likelihood conversion if you're having that personal interaction. So at the moment, I would, if I get an inquiry via my website, comes in by email, I typically reply by email. But you've made me think that actually maybe picking up the phone if they've included their phone number might actually be a better way.
Well, okay. My instinct is yes. But I'm turning into one of these horrible people where I expect people to make an appointment with me to phone me,
Mm,
and people fall into two camps. Some people love a call, other people think this is an imposition. So I don't know, Jenny.
yeah.
I think a really good email. But the other day we drafted two emails. One was a really good email written by AI. It was a really good email, but
Mm,
then we wrote a better email,
yeah.
you
Okay.
know? And
Yeah, and
actually
those, I guess, there's the point that people don't pick up the phone if they don't recognize the number. That's the other
yeah,
problem.
yeah. I had someone I was speaking to the other day said she got a job because the client got in touch and she said, let's meet for a coffee. And she just went and had a casual coffee. So her discovery call actually was like a casual coffee. And the client said, you have no idea. I've been in touch with five designers and I can't get through to the other four. Um, and I'm going to use you. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a client who emailed, and they obviously, I mean, she admitted herself that she set a number of sort of emails out at the same time, and she went with a curtain provider actually because they responded quickest. So it's interesting actually that just, yeah, it's getting that balance between the personal but also trying to respond quickly. So that's
yeah.
a, yeah, okay, lots to think about. And I think Connected and Laura asked this question before she left the call was about doing fee proposals in person. So I've typically done mine by email. So I was just interested in your advice to do it in person.
Yeah. Um, okay, it's one of those things I say because I hope that in the majority of cases it would happen, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. Um,
Mm,
but I do think so when I'm thinking about the great salespeople that I know that if they deliver in person, they are going to make the sale. And perhaps if they just sent it off, perhaps they wouldn't. Not everybody has that um, presence.
mhm.
Now, I'm trying to encourage us all to develop that presence. I think
Yeah.
you know, we should man up, sorry, ladies,
Woman up.
woman up and get on with it and do it. But if our voice is going to go all high and squeaky, or if we're going to burst into tears at at the opposite moment or whatever, then I don't know. But I do think if you can do it well, it's worth doing.
Okay.
And I also think, and the other reason I suggest it is what happens, you email it and they go scroll, scroll, scroll down to the bottom, look at the number, no way. Whereas, but what they don't know is everything that's going into it.
Mm,
If the conversation is, let's begin with what the vision we have and actually what is required to make this vision happen. So let's go through that and let me explain to you what this is. For that reason, it needs to cost this much because there is so much work involved. So that is the benefit of actually presenting it instead of just having the client go, I've done it, you go straight to the back page and out of context, it's a shock.
yeah.
So, although I do see people doing a good job of leading their clients, to expect a particular number through the way they process them through this system. So, ideally you prepare them in advance and then you present it so that they understand the significance and the value of what you're doing, and then the number is less of an issue, she says from a textbook.
Yeah, and maybe there's something about it depends how big the project is as well, and I'm thinking, in terms of the challenge could be that the client actually feels there's quite a few sort of stage gates they're going through to even get to
Yes,
work with you. That's the
yes.
other sort of challenge, but it depends on the project and the lead time into it and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and actually, a couple of clients I work with don't price the whole project. So they price up to the point that we have the concept. And when I say the concept, I don't just mean some vague, fluffy thing. I mean, pretty much everything is decided. The colors, the textures, some of the materials, the shapes, and so on. It's all nailed down so that then the final decision is like the obvious decision because that matches everything else that we've agreed. But they only fee propose to that point, and they say at that point, I'm going to produce the next fee proposal, which will be for the actual development of the scheme. And so it's in chunks rather than, let me tell you, every penny you're going to spend with me from now through till next December. So there are different ways of structuring the fee proposal as well to make it feel so that it's less, onerous upfront, maybe.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Lots to think about.
Yeah, too much.
Can I just add to that as well? Because I think if I'm just thinking back to a proposal which I didn't win, but basically I got to the point of doing the the paid for appointment with the client, and whilst I taken the brief, they initially asked me just to do some bedrooms, but when we were actually doing the initial, shall we say, I call it my energy activation session. So basically, within that session, we established that actually the client had plans in the future to want to actually do some renovations downstairs as well. And within that conversation, we established actually it would be better to actually do the full spatial plan based on the full house. And then if they wanted to actually just then move on to the individual bedrooms at that point, and then, but at least they had the top level plan.
Yeah.
And I just emailed that proposal to the client rather than presenting it to them. And obviously the proposal came in higher than what they were expecting because their initial thoughts were just to do the bedroom. Now, based on kind of everything everyone's been talking about, what I probably now know is if I had presented that to them, I've got this feeling I probably would have won the contract
Yeah.
because we could have changed the almost the thought process within it if they didn't want to do the top level plan first. Um, but it would have gave me that opportunity. So I think one of the lessons from all of this for me is definitely to go forward with presenting the proposals.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think also showing that this is not a fixed thing.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
it's how much do you want and how much are we going to do now? And here's how we could do it. But it could be a conversation. So it could
Yeah.
be, okay, well, I see your problem. In that case, here's my solution to this problem. We can do this. You're in control. It's your business. Your business is dictating the terms, but you're relaxed, you're informal, and you can flex for the client. But you can only do that if you're actually in a conversation with them. If you know,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I got
yeah,
some beautiful feedback from them. And it was more just to do with the headspace, and they didn't have the capacity headspace wise to be able to think of the picture as a whole. And I
yeah,
think if I'd presented that proposal to them, then we could have took that to the next stage and actually understood and it altered the proposal accordingly. So I think, yeah, it's definitely got value to it.
yeah. Sonia, hello.
Hi, hello. Something I do is I actually put the fee on the front page. Because then because I used to find that they would just sit there flicking through. I'm sitting there reading through everything. I'm reading the full scope to make sure that we've fully understood it. And then I break down the stages and what they're getting within each stage. And all they're interested in is that last figure on the last page.
Yeah.
So I now put it on the front page, which then they go, oh, right. Then we delve into the scope, and then we delve into the stages. And it seems to kind of like take the pressure off both of us a little bit.
I think that's brilliant. I think because it would be very rare for the client to say, get out. You know, I've read the
Yeah,
number. I'm not going to listen to anything more that you have to say. And so
no.
the thing that you leave on is
Mhm.
the high of the presentation, not the
Yeah,
shock of the number. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. One thing I was going to ask, because I've been backwards and forwards over charging a consultation fee. I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm, on and off with it. But I think, like you said, it's kind of like client specific. It's according to whether you think it's worth it. If it's somebody that's come through a referral or it's something that you really, really want, maybe don't do it. But there are times when it's appropriate. And even if they do wince at it, would you ever consider saying, okay, well, should you choose to proceed, the initial consultation fee will be taken off the first stage of the design fee
Yeah.
as a sweetener?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because I guess that just kind of like that also helps to assess their level of commitment as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
If someone really intends to go ahead, there's no loss for them in that.
No,
So,
exactly.
that really does, I think that does sort of position people. We
Yeah.
were talking about it today, and we were wondering whether by not charging, you were devaluing yourself. You were making yourself look like you. So we say your client determines your value by how much you value yourself. And maybe
Yeah.
charging is part of that. But I do think it's about how you carry yourself, it's about how you present yourself. You go in and you say, I'm all over this. I've been doing it for years. I know it inside out. I'm interested in your project. I've come along to have, I'm not talking, I wouldn't actually say these things, but it's about your attitude. Then let someone try and pretend that you're
Yeah.
not much or whatever.
Hmm.
It actually is about, it's partly about how you carry yourself and who
And
you
how
are
you value yourself.
and how you
Yeah.
value yourself.
Yeah. And I think also I am definitely doing this, out of Dorset and out of Hampshire, because obviously with rural diversification, I'm going to have to go literally much further afield. So, it's only reasonable really to factor in
Oh my
travel
gosh,
time,
absolutely.
mileage, all of
And
that.
And you have got the most fabulous niche. You are so distinct.
Yeah.
It's like, where can I find another Sonia? Well, not within 300 miles. So I have
No,
to I have to pay for Sonia.
of course.
Of
Of
course.
course.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julia.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So in that instance, then, would you suggest that it would be like an hourly fee plus expenses or?
Um, so if your client wants to fly you to see their place in the Bahamas, then obviously they would pay all of your expenses. And they might even pay extra time for your travel. Um, if it's, I suppose if you are in Surrey and your client's in London and you're in competition with a load of designers in London, and you say to the client, well, you're going to have to pay to get me from Surrey to London. I wouldn't do that. I would decide that that was just something that I needed to swallow, because if they didn't use me, they would use someone who didn't have those costs associated. But if it was, I actually have a particular expertise, the client really needs to use me, or I'm so busy, actually, I will do this business on this basis, but I'm not interested in doing it if it's going to come at a cost to me. So, Holly, there's all kinds of different
Yeah.
attitudes, I think, that you would bake into that. I think if you're in competition with local designers and you're putting a barrier up to using you, if it's not necessary, I wouldn't do it. But if you have other options and you don't want to incur the expense yourself, then I would charge for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm really sorry because I know a few people had to leave because I ran, so I can't believe that time went so quickly. Anyway, my apologies. We're way over. So it's the end of April, and I need to sort something out actually for May. I have someone in mind for May, and I'm hoping they're going to come through. Fingers crossed. And as I said, Hothouse in June is big. It's systems and operations and processes. It's an absolute monster. So, quite frankly, I think I'm going to have to go off and do a lot of work for that. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I will be in touch with dates for that. I've already got them in my diary, so I'll be in touch with dates for that. But don't forget, you can ask any questions that you want in Hothouse. And I hope to see you all around and keep in touch. And thank you very much for coming along today. It's always nice to have such a good gang of people. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Julia.
Thanks,
Julia.
Julia.
Bye.
Bye.